Your pain is their proof. In a high control group, a polite word for a cult, being hated isn't just expected, it is required. Today we analyze a talk by Mark Noumair entitled Prepare for Persecution. Mark is a helper to the teaching committee. If you are new here, you are welcome. If you are not, welcome back. This is Tell Me Dr. K, a channel manipulative religious leaders like the governing board of the Jehovah's Witnesses wish you never discover. If you crave for deep dives like this, subscribe and smash the notice bell for more. The architecture of fear. Decoding the preparation for persecution narrative. What if you were told that every criticism you hear about your community isn't just an opinion, but a supernatural attack? What if the simple act of voting or celebrating a holiday was actually an allegiance to a demonic system? Today we are analyzing a talk entitled Prepare for Persecution. On the surface, it calls for courage. But beneath the surface, there is a complex architecture of interpretation designed to create a world where isolation in safety and suffering is the ultimate proof of the truth. The shield reproach. The story begins with a warning: they will lie about you. The speaker draws a direct line from the trials of Jesus to the modern experience of his followers, framing any negative news as a badge of honor. In this section, the speaker discusses Matthew chapter 5 verse 11 and argues that because Jesus was lied about, modern worshippers should expect wicked things to happen to them also, as proof that they are in the Lord's day. Here is the clip.
Now, at Matthew chapter 5 and verse 11, Jesus said people would lyingly say every wicked thing against lovers of truth. They lied about Jesus Christ. They spread lies about first century Christians. They spread lies about true worshipers today. We should expect lies against us, expecting persecution, expecting reproach. This is what Jesus said would happen. And especially during the Lord's Day, which we are living in right now, prophecies indicate that even at this time, reproach and persecution would become clearly evident. For example, let's open our Bibles to Revelation chapter 13 and see how this applies in our day. Revelation chapter 13, we should expect and prepare for persecution.
Now, the speaker here creates a shield of reproach. And this creates a sage mentality where external criticism is never viewed as a valid feedback or a legal investigation, but as a prophetic fulfillment. Traditional contrast. Whilst the Bible talks about persecution and suffering, traditional theology distinguishes between suffering for righteousness and suffering for wrongdoing. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 15. This narrative bypasses self-reflection, turning all opposition into a validation of truth, the monster in the mirror. The narrative then introduces a villain, the wild beast. Now, this isn't a monster from a myth. It is the very world we live in, its government, its medicine, and its progress. The speaker identifies the beast from Revelation chapter 13 verse 1 as Satan's political creation and warns that even technological advancements are traps designed to win human admiration.
Now, Revelation chapter 13 and verse 1, it speaks about a wild beast. Now, this wild beast is Satan's political creation among the masses of mankind. But something about this wild beast that we need to understand, and let's now go to verse 3. The wild beast, or the political creation of Satan the devil. In verse 3 it says, all the earth, mankind, followed the wild beast with admiration. So it's admired. In what sense is this wild beast admired? Well, it's admired because it endeavors to create a higher standard of living in various countries. It makes advances in technology. It tries to cure diseases. So it wins that admiration of people. Oh, look at the wild beast. But now let's go beyond admiration. Notice in verse 4 what begins to happen. And they worshiped the dragon because it gave the authority to the wild beast. There it is again. And they worshiped. People worshiped the wild beast. So now we go from admiration to worship. Worshiping the wild beast. Well, in what respect? How is it worshiped? It's worshiped when people say love of country before love of God. They put love of country, their devotion in nationalism before their love of Jehovah God. So from admiration to worship. But now notice verse 7, what happens. And it was permitted to wage war with the holy ones, true, and conquer them. And it was given, now notice this, authority. So now the wild beast is given authority over every tribe, people, tongue, and nation. Authority, worldwide, authority over the worldwide system of rulership, tribe, people, tongue, and nation. And now it uses its authority, especially against Jehovah's people, to clamp down on the work that Jehovah God has given us to do, to try to ban our work, persecute us. That's the authority that they use against God's people. We have to be prepared for that.
This interpretation serves a purpose for strict political neutrality.
Our theme this month is Christian neutrality. What it means, what it takes, and why we choose it. What is your opinion? Where do you stand? Can one person make a difference in countering injustice? When we hear people discussing political topics, we might at first think their conversation is purely philosophical. But when injustice threatens our loved ones, it can seem personal. It's true we don't vote for political parties or candidates, but neither do we disrupt elections or interfere with those who choose to vote. It's true we don't lobby, campaign, or run for government office, but neither do we criticize those in power, undermine their policies, or demonstrate for political change. It's true we won't salute a flag, but neither will we burn a flag, spit on a flag, or disparage the nation that a flag represents, even in lands where these are considered protected expressions of freedom. It's true we don't sing national anthems, but neither do we discourage others from singing, nor do we make a public spectacle of not singing. We simply don't participate. It's true we wouldn't kill people in war, but neither would we attack people at home. So while we don't promote any political position, neither do we condemn any political position, even in our heart. That is what neutrality means. We don't take sides. But what if the demands of the state conflict with the commands of Jesus? There's a Bible principle for that. Are you thinking of what it says at Acts chapter 5, verses 28 and 29, that we must obey God as ruler rather than men?
By demonizing all human governments as demonic, the organization ensures that all its members remain isolated and loyal only to the group's leadership.
But now notice here in verse 8, in any authority or any victory they might have over God's people, the intense suffering, yes, that we have to undergo because of this authority, well, it's going to be short-lived. And notice in verse 8 why we say that. It says, not one of their names, that those in Satan's organization, not one of their names has been written in the scroll of life. So any apparent victory is short-lived because no one in Satan's visible organization is going to be written in the scroll of life. The only ones written in the scroll of life here are those who rule with Jesus Christ. So again, any apparent victory that they might have over God's people is merely temporary. However, we go further in verse 9, and now we have a warning. Verse 9 says, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. Well, what does this mean? Well, John now is giving direction for us to have discernment. If we have an ear of discernment, we have to hear, we have to listen. Why? Because Jehovah God is allowing the wild beast to have this type of authority. It's allowing the wild beast to operate. It's allowing the wild beast to go to these lengths. So we have to have discernment and understand what this means in our life. Well, what does it mean? Well, verse 10. If anyone is meant for captivity, he will go into captivity. So there's the persecution again. As some of us will go into captivity, or our brothers are already in captivity. We think about those in Russia or in Eritrea. They've been in captivity, but we go into captivity then. We don't compromise. We hold on to Bible principles. A little bit further, it goes on in verse 10. And if anyone will kill with the sword, he must be killed with the sword. So there it is again. Now, some of our brothers have lost their lives. They've given their lives because of not compromising. They're integrity keepers. And this is our lot in life. It could mean any one of us. But the fact is, that's why we have an ear of discernment. And now it goes on in verse 10 and says, this is where it calls for endurance and faith on the part of the holy ones. So it will take a tremendous amount of endurance, not giving up hope in the face of an obstacle, and faith, this trust and conviction that whatever Jehovah God allows will certainly ultimately end up being in our best interests at the end. So faith, courage, endurance, not compromising, and always basing our decisions on Bible principles. Now, John goes further in verse 11. He identifies now another wild beast. He identifies a beast. This one it's a two-horned wild beast. Notice that there in verse 11. That's the Anglo-American world power. That's a two-horned wild beast. Now in verse 14, we have another beast. This is the image of the wild beast, and that's the United Nations. So the Anglo-American world power. But look what it does there in verse 14. And in verse 15, it breathes life into the image. So the Anglo-American world power breathing life into the image, the United Nations. Why? So that it can play a role in world history. It can move and exist and act and play a role in world history. And that's exactly what we see happening today during the Lord's Day.
Traditional contrast. This sharply contradicts teachings like Romans 13, where the state is described as a servant of God for maintaining order. But most traditional scholars view the beast as a specific historical or future figure, not a blanket condemnation of all human civic effort. I continue to part 2 of this episode. This is Tell Me, Dr. K, a channel manipulative religious leaders like the governing board of the Jehovah's Witnesses wish you never discover. Because on this channel, we cut through the noise and expose what they are hiding beneath. If you crave for deep dives like this, subscribe and smash the notice bell for more.